Hello and welcome to this short presentation on strangulation prevention for hairdressers and salons. My name is Betty Taylor and I'm the founding director of the Red Rose Foundation. I have over 30 years' experience working across the domestic violence and sexual assault sectors. I'm current member of the Queensland Domestic Violence Death Review Board, and I've worked in a lot of partnerships, including one with Central Queensland University for research. I bring together a vast experience of talking with women, children and men about their experiences of domestic violence. That is what I'm hoping to share with you today. Before we begin our presentation though, I'd like to talk about the prevalence of domestic and family violence in our communities, which is high. This presentation, which focuses on strangulation and sexual violence, may be triggering for you. It may be that you've experienced violence or someone close to you. If you have any at all emotional reactions to this presentation, please seek support either in your workplace or DV Connect 1800 811 811. Hairdressers play an important role in the lives of thousands of women, men and children across Australia. Often you may find yourself in a conversation with someone about intimate aspects of their lives. It may be you're unsure of how to respond. That is why the training provided by Hairdressers with Hearts is so important in providing hairdressers with the information and skills they need to provide a safe response. In your work as a hairdresser, you may be responding to, firstly, what is told to you directly by a client about domestic violence, what you may overhear from other discussions in the salon, and what you observe about a client physically and emotionally. They may not actually be talking about it, but your observations are very important, especially with regard to non-lethal strangulation. Domestic violence impacts directly on so many Australians. 1 in 4 women have experienced violence in their intimate relationships, and 1 in 16 men have experienced violence in an intimate relationship. Last year, 74 women, 8 men and 24 children died as a direct result of domestic violence. What you do, what you say, and how you respond can make a difference. Domestic violence has many forms, from physical violence, emotional and psychological abuse, sexual abuse, social abuse, financial abuse, intimidation, threats, and coercive behaviours. For this presentation, however, we're talking solely about strangulation. While we're doing this, it's one of the highest risk indicators for future homicide or death. Strangulation, it's a form of asphyxia characterised by closure of the blood vessels and or the air passages of the neck as a result of external pressure on the neck or throat. This is vital as hairdressers that you know this and know the signs to look for. Strangulation. Death can occur days or weeks after the attack due to carotid artery dissection and respiratory complications such as pneumonia, acute respiratory distress, and the risk of blood clots travelling to the brain. 1 in 4 women will have experienced intimate partner violence in their lifetime and are at high risk. Up to 68% will experience near-fatal strangulation by their partner. Loss of consciousness can occur within 5 or 10 minutes and death within minutes. 35% of strangulation victims are strangled during sexual assault. In Queensland, we were the first state to have specific legislation dealing with strangulation. Other states are following suit. It is a dangerous behaviour that needs some critical responses. Smothering also fits in with a broader definition of strangulation, and it's about an obstruction of air passages. People may talk about a pillow, a bag, plastic bag, or some other restraint placed over their nose or mouth. Choking is the obstruction of the air passages, and it's something that we would often describe as having something caught in your throat. Choking, for instance, on a chicken bone. Many people who have experienced non-lethal strangulation will use the expression, "he tries to choke me." But choking isn't the actual force placed on someone's neck or throat. Strangulation can occur to somebody by another person in 3 ways. Manual, where someone is grabbing them around their throat. This could be that they have 2 hands to the throat. One, it may be they're grabbing them from the side or coming at them from the back. It could also mean that they are using what is commonly called a chokehold or a vascular neck restraint. Why we need to know these things is because they'll each have different injuries, but they each constitute manual strangulation. Ligature strangulation is where someone is using a piece of jewellery the victim's wearing, a scarf, it could be a telephone cord, piece of rope. Mechanical, which we don't hear a lot of, but it could be things like someone sitting on someone's chest with such force that they're actually stopping breathing. All of these would constitute strangulation and, as previously said, very dangerous behaviour. This diagram shows what a carotid restraint looks like. It can be used in police training and it can be used in martial arts. It doesn't matter where it's used, it's potentially deadly. Because if the carotid artery is damaged, it can still cause death. These diagrams show the difference between when blood flow is interrupted, and that's the carotid artery dissection, and where airflow and the time to death. I acknowledge that we have learnt a lot from the Training Institute on Strangulation Prevention in San Diego, who are now our training partners. One thing that you may notice for clients coming into your salons is what's known as petechiae. Petechiae is broken blood vessels or capillaries, and they could be all over the face, as the photograph on the left shows. On the right, that photograph is showing where it's in the eye and around the eyes. And on first look, you could make the assumption that someone has a black eye. Those marks as pressure that's been placed on someone's neck or throat, squeezed to the point that blood vessels have popped. These images show the damage that can be done to both a child and to an adult through strangulation. Not all signs of strangulation are visible, but ones that you may see in your salons is where that petechiae is through the scalp, those blood vessels through the scalp. It can be bald spots where hair has been pulled, could be lumps to the scalp where someone's collapsed during strangulation, where they've become unconscious. It can be that there's voice changes. You've noticed that maybe that's put off as, I've got a sore throat. But actually, It can leave permanent damage to the vocal cords. It could be redness around the eyes, behind the ears. It could be a whole lot of, things that may not necessarily be put down to dangerous domestic violence, but it is. It could be that a person's complaining of getting a lot more headaches, that they've got droopy eyes, changing behaviour, even things like memory loss, people that are forgetting their appointments or forgetting what they've been told, forgetting a whole lot of things around their concentration, ringing in the ears, bruising, tongue swelling, all signs of non-lethal strangulation. Just recapping on the previous slide. So these are the things you may observe. People may talk to you about domestic violence with some of these things. Sometimes they're not even aware that these things have come from strangulation. But it's important that we know, and we know what has happened. So what can you do if someone discloses strangulation assaults, or if you witness any of the indicators your client has possibly experienced a very dangerous assault? What you do could save a life. Here are some simple steps to remember. A, B, C. A, always ask alone if possible. May be difficult to do in a very busy salon, but never talk to a victim of domestic violence in front of their partners. When they walk out your salon door, you've got to make sure you haven't added to their risk. Is it possible to speak to your concerns in the salon? But if not, could you do a follow-up phone call if it's safe to do so? I'm just ringing to see how that colour is, or how your cut is. How are you feeling today? I was a bit concerned talking with you yesterday. Make sure it's always safe, whatever you decide to do. A, ask alone. B, believe what you're told. This is so important. You may be the first person they've spoken to, or they've been ignored by past disclosures. It's not your role to determine the truth. Leave this to the police and others. B, believe what you were told. C, call in resources. Know where to go to get assistance. No one's asking you to be a social worker, a police officer, or an advocate. Know what resources are around in your local community. If there are domestic violence services in your community, you may like to have some of their brochures in there that you can hand to people if needed. But Hairdressers with Hearts can provide further information to you as well. So this is a very, very short overview of strangulation, but what you do in a salon is so important. A, B, C, ask alone, believe what you're told, call in resources. Those 3 simple steps can make a huge difference. So in closing, I'd just like to say, make sure your salon is a safe salon. That clients that come into your salon, we know many talk about domestic violence. They need support. They need their safety concerns taken seriously. They need confidentiality. But for yourself, you need to take care and be safe. But be informed as well. Further information on strangulation is provided at the Australian Institute for Strangulation Prevention or at the Red Rose Foundation. So thank you for listening. Thank you for participating in this training. And I know together we can make a difference in people's lives. Thank you.